Artlist.io. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined.
All right, y'all. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us at Earth Mama Network. This is a special occasion. You know, every now and then I talk politics, and I have everyone on from our mayor of our local city to people running for the DA, for people running to city council. And now I'm reaching all the way down south in Southern California, and I'm talking to Sister Frederica. Am I saying it right?
Frederica.
Frederica.
You said it was
Yes.
almost right. You almost
Okay.
said it perfect. Frederica, but just call me Shay.
Okay, I'm talking to Sister Shay, and Sister
Yes,
Shay is going to be running for mayor. She is running for mayor of Inglewood in Southern California, and I think it's awesome. So thank you, first of all, for accepting my invitation for this interview. I know that you're a
Thank
mother.
you very much for inviting
You're
me.
welcome. So I know that you're a mother, you're an activist, you're a community organizer, and you're a lawyer. So what I want to do a little bit is to kind of ask you, first of all, what made you run for mayor of Inglewood?
So I ran because I care about my community. So that's the first thing. On top of that, I have acquired a very unique skill set. I recently attained a law education, as you mentioned, and my background is in community organizing and activism. So with my skill set and my understanding of the law and government, I got to a point where I felt like I was obligated to step up and try to positively impact my community in this way. So just my love for Inglewood, my love for my people, and the desire to help weed out the corruption in my community is what made me run ultimately.
Okay, so basically you are originally from where?
I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee. That is where I am born and raised.
Right on. So how did you get to Inglewood? What's been your journey to Inglewood?
So I left for college at 18. I went to Middle Tennessee State University. From there, I found myself moving to Europe with my ex and my son. I lived there for a few years, and then we moved to Atlanta, Georgia. And we lived in Atlanta, Georgia for 7 years. And while I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, I got involved in the television industry, and I produced a talk show there that afforded me the opportunity to move to Los Angeles to work with the TV network. So that is how I got to LA. I moved here in 2012 to work in television and to get my talk show nationally syndicated. I thought that that was my purpose. And in the midst of me working in television, like my second year here, Mike Brown was killed, and that activated me and completely made me change course, because it's like I saw behind the curtain. All of a sudden, what I thought was reality, it was confirmed to me that it was not. And so I began to organize in the local community here. And I have a son, as you mentioned, he's 17 years old now. So it was always very important for me to raise him in a Black community. So once I moved here to LA, I intentionally sought out Black neighborhoods, and Inglewood is one of them that I found and that I absolutely loved. I fell in love with Inglewood, and I moved here, and I've been here for 7 years, working on my 8th year so far.
So let's stop real quick and just talk a little bit about the Mike Brown, because I just want to kind of give a little background to the Mike Brown, because one of the things that we do in America, we have a way of taking the sting out of things. So we'll be like, Black Lives Matter, and then it just becomes like a slogan, but it don't really mean nothing. Like it almost becomes like almost like a joke, like, oh yeah, Black Lives Matter, child, and you keep going. But Mike Brown, something happened with Mike Brown that made a lot of people stop, and like it just changed. It just turned everything upside down, which should have been happening. But what really happened with Mike Brown, and what was it about that situation that activated your activism?
That's a great question. For me, it was the fact that he was a young Black man. He was a teenager, and I was the mother of this young Black man who was soon become a teenager. And my son has been in the top 90 percentile for height since he was born. So even though my son was in elementary school at this time, you know, being his mother, I knew that someday he would be 6'3", the height that he is today. I knew that someday he would walk outside of my home as my child, this baby boy that I know, to the store, and he will be looked at by someone else as if he is an adult. That's exactly what we saw happen with Mike Brown. We saw them treat him inhumanely. And most importantly, we saw them treat him like this was some big grown man who was such a threat, when ultimately he was somebody's child, you know? So just the fact that this was a young Black boy, and to see his life and the way that it did, that triggered me, because I was looking at it like, I don't want this to happen to my son or any other person in my community. So that really activated me.
What kind of things were happening in Inglewood? You talked about your son, but was there any kind of climate or anything happening in Inglewood that ignited? Because I think that's what happened across the country. Like that was such an example was happening in a lot of communities.
Oh, yes, ma'am. So I actually wasn't living in the city of Inglewood yet. I was still living in Los Angeles when Mike Brown was killed. And I realized that the same thing that was happening in Ferguson, Missouri was happening right here in Los Angeles County. And at the time, there is a young man by the name of Ezell Ford who was killed by the Los Angeles Police Department. And, you know, his death was particularly egregious because they shot him in the back. And not only did they shoot him in the back, they shot him in the back at point blank range, put the muzzle of the gun on this young man's back and shot him in his back as he lay helpless on the ground. That definitely activated me more, because it was like, no, this is not just happening in the South in Ferguson, Missouri. It's also happening right here in my own town. And it made me dive in and start doing my research, and actually holding myself accountable as well, when it comes to doing something to prevent these types of injustices.
What kind of changes started to happen there in LA or in Inglewood at that time? Did anything change?
Yeah, I mean, the Black Lives Matter movement started here. So, us coming together and initially doing that work is what put Black Lives Matter on the map. We are the very first. We didn't talk about this. You don't know this probably. But I'm a part of the first core group of Black Lives Matter,
Mm.
BLMLA. We're the very first chapter of Black Lives Matter. So, yeah, we started a whole movement. Here we are in 2022, and we know that Black Lives Matter is not a national known organization. It's actually internationally known. So, yeah, I would say that a lot happened. We were able to spark a fire across this country and throughout the world, and people are still becoming activated.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that, because I really didn't know. You just hear stuff and it's like, oh, we have chapters everywhere. Um, but what is the
Yeah.
core thing besides lighting a fire? Because Black folks are extremely good at lighting a lot of things. Like we've given the world hip hop, jazz, you name it, we've done it. However, what happens is things sometimes don't really change for us. What things could you see, or maybe there's some things in the cooker now that could change? Because we're talking like, I don't know if you know about the summer of the Red Summer, they call it, of 1919, where they burnt like over 60 Black towns to the ground. So
Yeah,
we
my
know
family
that
was included in one of those towns in Tennessee, Anderson Town, which
right
was
on.
burned down. Yes, ma'am.
So when you think about those times, what kind of things could we do differently or do more of now that maybe we wouldn't have a chance to do before?
I think we need to put a lot of focus on creating legislative change.
All right.
We have been negatively impacted by the law since we were first brought here and enslaved on this land. From the very beginning, they were creating legislation that enslaved us and that gave them the right to kill us and treat us as if we weren't human. And I'm not exaggerating, because
That's
they
what
said that we were not human.
Mhm.
So I think that now that we have the opportunity to educate ourselves and put ourselves in those types of positions of power, that we should really focus on that. Now, of course, there are several different things from several different angles that we need to do to obtain our complete liberation. But legislatively and in the law and in this judicial process, we have to insert ourselves and be able to make decisions for ourselves and for our own communities in those positions. So for me, legislation is very important. And it all ties into me running for mayor as well, because in Inglewood, this is considered a local government, and our local government is controlled by a legislative body, which consists of our 4 city councilmen and our mayor. And collectively, they write law here in this community. So that just, I think, shines a light on how important being involved legislatively is. Because if you got the wrong people writing the laws for whatever corporate interest is backing them, or for whatever secret hatred that they're holding in their heart, then we see the types of laws that we've been getting for the past 400 years in this country.
So
But when we are in those positions, we can change it.
what kind of power does a mayor in Inglewood hold?
The mayor doesn't have unilateral power. The mayor in Inglewood makes all of its decisions with the city council. So he has an equal vote. And yeah, collectively, they make the decisions. Some cities are run by a strong mayor board, which would give the mayor unilateral control and extra power, but that is not the type of government that we have here in Inglewood.
So, and you running for mayor in Inglewood, what kind of changes could you fight for, or that you would like to see happen or come to Inglewood?
I would like for us to invest in social service programs first and foremost. We need to do things that will reduce the violence and the homelessness in our community. Shootings and murders happen here in Inglewood often. Today is January 25th of 2022, and just maybe 2 days ago, someone kicked open someone's door and just began to shoot, and 4 people were killed. 2 young women, one 20 years old who was celebrating her 20th birthday on Sunday, and her sister was killed along with her and 2 more people. And, it did make national headlines, but these types of scenarios happen here in our community frequently. And we don't have any type of programs here that can interject, deter, and create other avenues opposed to gang violence. Because let's be clear, that is what it stems down to. So social service programs. Also, we need to invest in education. Currently in our budget, we have $0 going towards anything social service related. We have $0 going towards anything education related. I would really like to see our city get back grips of our education system, because we are currently in receivership and we don't even control our own education system because our past leadership, has been very corrupt and mismanaged money. Also, for me, environmental justice is very important. If you are familiar with where Inglewood is located, we are directly under the flight path of LAX. And on top of that, we have a whole waste management plant here in Inglewood that a lot of our residents don't even know we have. And this waste management plant picks up all the toxic and hazardous waste from 11 different cities surrounding Inglewood, and they dump it here in our community. Another thing regarding our environment is the direction that our current leadership continues to go into using oil, gas. We have these big billboard advertisements all through our city, and they're operated by diesel fuel. We need to be moving towards natural and renewable energy as a city government. We need transparency and accountability from our police department. Our relationship between our community and our police department is pretty much non-existent. There's a lot of questions that have been asked that they just flat out refuse to answer. And it's so bad that, we have had to sue them. The ACLU just sued the Inglewood Police Department because they are engaging in practices such as deleting and destroying police records that may include police misconduct, any type of police killings or brutality, any racial bias, and any sexual assaults or harassment reported against the police officers. That's just one thing. We have a whole list of things here in this city. Our small businesses, we're having the Super Bowl here in February, and we recently had the Rams build a new stadium here. And we also have the Clippers currently building their stadium here. So we have these big corporations that are coming into our community that have made the cost of living here go up over 60% in the past 3 years. So, for instance, the median income of an Inglewood resident is $27,000, while the median cost of a house on the market here in Inglewood is over $800,000. So, it's pushing residents out. It's creating situations for people like me who are renters, but someday dreamed of owning a home in our community. It makes it impossible for us to be able to afford housing. Thankfully, we have a temporary rent control in place, but it's about to expire. I'm sorry.
That's right.
And we need a long-term rent control put in place. And we also need for the city to step in and do something that will give current Inglewood residents the opportunity to become homeowners here
Right on.
at fair market value, though, not at the
Mhm.
inflated rate. You know, and our
Mhm.
city government has the power and authority to do that. May I grab me a bottle of water really quick?
Yes, please, please,
Thank
please do, please do, please do. Family, while the sister's getting herself some water, this is great information. If you were just joining us, we're talking to Shay Dixon, and she is running for mayor of Inglewood, California. So, and this sister is, besides being a mother, which is most important, she's an activist, a community organizer, and a lawyer. So, and she's running for mayor in her city of Inglewood. And I think this is really important. This is a young sister. And I really believe we need more young, vibrant people like her to be in office. So we need to get behind her. We need to support her. Sis, what is your makeup of Inglewood? What is your population and what's your makeup?
So we are 50% Hispanic. We are 40% African American or Black. We are 5% mixed race. So people who consider themselves mixed with, you know, two other races. And then we are 3%, 4% actually, they say, that come from other countries. And then we have a 1% white population in Inglewood so far.
So
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I was going to say, I heard you talking about the importance of like supporting our young people. And that's something that's very important to me as well. I want to help build and develop the next leaders here in Inglewood. I think one of our biggest issues that we've had is we've had these career politicians or these people who are backed by corporate interests go into these positions, and they are not advocating on behalf of the community. So if we can teach our young people about government and about their rights in their own communities and empower them, then we can train them up to be in these positions so that they can govern this community themselves. And that is something that is very important to me, and that I am focusing on right now and will continue to focus on as mayor. Because for me, this is the beginning of my career. You know, I don't intend to become one of these dictator people in this position. I want to be here, complete the objectives that I have set out for myself to complete in this role, and then be able to move on to the next phase of my career because I have other aspirations that are legislatively related.
You talked about a little bit about education as a part of your platform. What would change about education? What legislation would you fight for with education to improve the quality of life?
Well, we need to fund our education department first and foremost. You know, if we can get to the point to where we have not educators, right? Because I feel like I have come across some very wonderful educators here in Inglewood, but I'm speaking on the people who run our board of education. So if we can get some trustworthy people in those positions to actually direct our school board and our school system in the right direction, that is a step in the best direction we could ever possibly go into. Ultimately, we want parents to feel comfortable putting their kids in the Inglewood Unified School District. We want them to feel like this is a place that their child can go to and get a quality education. And as someone whose child did matriculate through the Inglewood Unified School System, I know that that's possible. You know, my son, I think, is no different from any other student here in Inglewood, and he was able to excel through every school, in elementary, in middle school, as well as in high school, where he attended City Honors College Preparatory Academy, which is an academic-based high school that we have here in the city. And those kids who get accepted into that school work really hard academically to get there. So the fact that we even have that type of school here in our city, I think that that is a good example of our educators doing what they're supposed to do in those positions. So for me, it is just more so being about supporting our educators and investing in our scholars and in our athletes and providing more opportunities for our youth and fixing up their buildings. You know, I canvass every week here. And this past Saturday, when I was out, I had the opportunity to talk to a young man from Morningside, and that's what he's like. Our school's falling apart. He's like, it makes no sense, the conditions that they expect for us to be able to learn in. And these kids shouldn't be saying that, because Inglewood just got over $90 million to make improvements in our schools. So, yeah, but one thing that we know that they did for Morningside specifically is they just painted the outside. You know, we want them to actually use the money for our students and for our schools. We do not want our leadership to use the money to funnel their pockets. And unfortunately, that's what we have seen here in Inglewood.
Safety, that's major concern. What is your platform around safety?
We have a police department that we give more than half of our yearly budget to, that is supposed to do that. They're supposed to make sure that our streets are safe. And so we're going back to the conversation about accountability and transparency from our police department, because we don't feel safe with them. They aren't mitigating potential risk by going in first to make sure that our streets are safe and secure in any way. They do come in after the tragedy has occurred and they start an investigation, but they have less than a 20% success rate of finding the suspects and prosecuting them. So for the amount of money that they make, they definitely should be giving the community a lot more. So we got to start at the top when it comes to safety. It's not like we don't have a police force that is supposed to be keeping our streets clean. We do have that. We just don't have a good relationship between our police department and our community. And that's the big issue, because our police department works for us. So we should have a good relationship with them, and we should feel safe, and they should be out walking in the communities, getting to know residents. Inglewood isn't big at all. We're only a 9-mile radius. Like, we're this very small community, and we got the manpower for them to be out here actually making sure that our streets are safe, but they aren't. So yeah, we need to clean up our police department.
Is there any models across this country that you can use to kind of to make this come alive? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, normally in some cities, there's usually like in San Francisco, with some of the issues that they're having in Frisco under Mayor London Breed, they have city workers who basically are out in the streets working with people. Like, is there any particular model you would use to help sharpen that police department, to bring that community and the police department so they can work together, like, instead of working against each other? Or, you know what I mean? Like, do you have a model of how that can be done?
Yeah, you know, from my knowledge of police departments in general, the issues that we are experiencing here in Inglewood are similar all across the nation. I am looking for that model that you're speaking of. But, you know, it's difficult to create that model when the people who are in charge refuse to speak to the community, refuse to answer, you know, questions that the community deem important, and they are being protected and shielded by our leadership. Our current mayor was an Inglewood police officer prior to becoming mayor. So we've definitely seen a lot of him protecting them and allowing them to get away with certain things.
Okay.
So our issues here, a lot of them will be resolved just by getting better leadership in place.
Okay. What about your homelessness? Do Inglewood, like a lot of cities in the United States? I live in Sacramento. We have a humongous homeless problem. Like I've never seen it like this before. Is there a homeless problem in Inglewood? And if you were mayor, what can you do to help to ease some of that burden, or help our homeless?
Yeah, unfortunately, homelessness is a great issue here in Inglewood, and we see our community members pop up on the streets every day. More people.
Mhm.
In fact, the homeless encampments are moving towards the arena, which I think we all figured that they would eventually find their place there. Their way there,
Mhm.
and yeah, they are everywhere. And as I mentioned before, we don't have any money going towards any social service programs. So we need programs that can assist our homeless because, like I keep saying, our community is so small that we see them. We know where they are living at. We know where they are sleeping at every night. So it would not be a hard challenge to actually send social workers and people who are equipped with helping homeless people get off of the streets and into housing, to send them directly to the people, to put them in whatever arrangements. And it can be done because I've watched it happen just over this past month with one of our community members. There are beds available, there are different resources out there, but what we have been left to do as a community is to try to tap into the resources of Los Angeles.
Mm.
So it goes back to funding social service programs because, like I keep saying, we have $0 in our budget going towards any social service program. So we need to be able to fund either the organizations that are already out here doing the work so that they can come in and assist our community members in this way, or we need to put up our own buildings and the city can do that. We are constantly throwing up new constructions in honor of this Super Bowl and the Olympics that are coming, in these sports arenas. But it's time for us to put our focus on our community members and start investing in them. So yes, and I have ideas around homelessness as well, but that falls under the social service programs piece.
Well, if you just joined us, we are talking to Sister Shay Dixon. She is running for the mayor of Inglewood. And so I ask you all to please go to her site, support this sister. We desperately need young, fresh, brilliant people like her in political office. And we need to help her get elected for mayor of Inglewood. When it comes to girls and women, do you have anything on your platform or anything on your agenda for becoming mayor to work with them? How can we have their quality of life improve? Because
Yeah.
we know when the quality of life improves for girls and women, it really improves for everyone.
Yes, absolutely. Young women are very important to me. I did work as a mentor, and the past mayor of Compton, her name is Mayor Brown. She had a program called Bloom, Building Ladies of Opulence and Magnitude. And I had a wonderful experience with those young women, and they're still young women that I provide mentorship to. So, yes, absolutely. I don't have a specific program in mind that I would like to discuss on this platform right now. But, I'm a Black woman. I was a Black girl. So, um, me being able to make sure that young Black girls in this community always have access to me, and me being able to not only set a good example for them, but factor them in to decisions and make sure that I empower them as well, is very important to me. We One of our community members, we just lost one of our community members last week that also, well, it didn't make national news actually, and it's so unfortunate. She's a 16-year-old young lady named Tiani Theus, and they found her body on the side of the highway, and someone shot her. They killed her and just threw this baby out on the streets. And our young girls here are being manipulated and taken advantage of and human trafficked and forced into prostitution. So these are things that are definitely important to me. I just had a meeting earlier today with an organization that, this is one of their emphasis, and we are planning around some different things that we're going to do specifically on the tracks, and I'm not sure if you all use the same terminology in Sacramento, but the tracks here that's the streets that the young women are being human trafficked on. So yeah, I have not gotten into that work. That's some heavy work. And when I worked at the public defender's office, we did have cases where we were representing defendants who were, it was alleged that they were human trafficking some of these young girls. And I saw situations where the young girls like 12 and 13 years old, some really sick stuff happening in these streets. And, our local government is aware of it. But I think that our local government can only do so much. It's also up to us as community members. Everything that I'm doing right now, it has nothing to do with me being mayor. I'm not mayor. This has everything to do with me caring about my community, and me doing my due diligence and stepping up to the plate where I know that I can be helpful.
Right. So I know here in Sacramento, like our homeless is pretty high, but 40% over 40% of the homeless in Sacramento are Black women with children. So we know that the housing market is just as high here as it is down there. So we know that the paying in jobs. So if you're talking about trying to help family, you kind of have to start with the woman in terms of, because she's the one right now that's heading the house. So that was one of the reasons why I asked that question, because when you look at housing and you look at job security, housing security, food security, anything has to do with people being healthy and well and good citizens, somehow keeps going back to your parents and where they're living and what they're able to make to provide for their children. So there's some real core linkages, even down to the CSEC, that's what we call them here, CSEC youth. Even though there's a young people, there's also a lot of older people involved in this. So I know as mayor, it was hard to kind of tackle some of these things, but I just feel like it needs to be a little bit more in the forefront of our mind as we're talking about the police and as we're talking about, greedy capitalists. I'm just going to be honest that we got to be talking about how can we help parents and families support, family. We know part of wealth is being able to own a house. We know that. That's how you get real equity.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. That's why those are my top priorities. All of my priorities center our residents, it centers our young people, because I know that they are the future of this community. It centers our elders and our veterans.
That's right.
Because they are often forgotten about as well.
Yes.
And like you said, it centers our mothers, which are the heads of most of our households here in this community. That is one big change with me being in leadership here, opposed to what we currently have. I know that we have money in our budget that can go to these types of programs. It's just not being directed there. Our leadership has just decided to give the money to other places, but we have to change that. We can, whether that is we're pulling out of funds that we already have, or we are redistributing some of the money that we have already apportioned, or we are creating new ways to raise money in this community for it. Regardless, it's going to be done, and it can be done. It could have already been done, if there was the desire to actually do it.
So what is in your budget? Like I live in Elk Grove, which is next door to Sacramento, but I work in Sacramento. We have one time I went to a city council meeting that I was invited to just out the blue. So I'm gonna go this time, and they happened to be discussing the budget. So I was like, okay. So I learned about a line item. They was breaking down what the budget looked like a pie chart. And I think about at this time, I don't know if it's still the same now, but about 5% of that city budget was for something called the quality of life. And that was around senior services, stuff for young people. What is Inglewood's budget? I do know that 50% of that budget was the police department. I remember that.
Yeah.
Like, because we're a bedroom community, people live here and they work somewhere else,
Yeah.
So what is Inglewood's budget?
Well, I don't have the budget in front of me. I have the data. If you would have let me know that you wanted to talk about it,
right.
Printed it off. We could have gone through it.
Yeah, no, you told me a big chunk was the police department, so I get that because that's the same thing here.
Right. Yeah. So we have about $140 million a year that is accounted for. And we do have like a general fund that has money in it, but the police department, like we were saying, they actually get more than 50% now. They're somewhere like 55%, and they do come in to the city council meetings and ask for more money. It has happened since the budget for this fiscal year has been approved. But we owe the state of California. We have to pay them for this receivership that we're under. We also don't control our own EMS system, but which is something that we could and should do. So we have to pay out the contractors, or which we contracted from Los Angeles. We use theirs, and these are ways that we can be saving money as a community if we handle these things ourselves. So I think it comes down to really getting some good candidates in position, in these decision-making positions, who will make the right decisions and help this city make money. And then once this city makes money, be able to utilize a great portion of it to assist our residents and our young people.
So what do you think, why should people vote for you?
People should vote for me if they want change in this community, if they want positive change. If people want the residents of Inglewood to be centered, if they actually want the residents and the small business owners here in Inglewood to be advocated for, then they should choose me. If they want a mayor who they can trust, who has good character, and who will be in that position making decisions ethically, then they should choose me. If they want someone that's from the community, my heart is in the community. My heart is going to remain in the community. I am the community. When I am mayor, I will remain the community. They should vote for me for all of those reasons and many more.
So they can find you on Twitter, on Instagram. I put your website up. Support this sister. We need her to be the mayor of Inglewood. I believe we can save our own communities, but it has to be us saving us. So, sister, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for coming to share your vision for our community, even though you're down south in California. All of it is relative because we'll be all cheering for you, supporting you. We need your leadership. We need your leadership.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you very much for this wonderful platform that you have provided. I did research you before I came on your show. So thank you very much for all of the work that you have done in our community and that you continue to do. And I am honored to be here. Thank you so very much.
Hold on just a minute. Don't hang up. Family, I will see you all. I'll be back again. We'll be interviewing the sister that's running for DA in Sacramento. We got to get her in there. Change is happening, family. We need you to support us. We'll be right back. Peace.
Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined.